The summer 2021 anime season is in full swing, and as usual, there are too many shows to watch. It's important for anime to make a good first impression so they don't get dropped. On this channel, I like to take that to the extreme, and see which shows from the season catch my interest in only the first 5 minutes of runtime. My rules for this video are simple. I only look at new shows, not sequels, I don't read any synopses beforehand, and I skip any openings to make sure I get 5 minutes of actual plot. The first show is Genjutsu Shugi Yusha no Okoku Sai Kenki, or How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. It's an isekai anime where a guy named Kazuya is summoned to solve the kingdom's problems. Unlike most isekai protagonists, he's actually very calm about his summoning, though he's not necessarily happy about it. Kazuya seems studious, so based on that and the title of the show, I don't think this will be an action show. Most of the animation is mediocre, with typical JC staff pans for most of it, but the summoning animation is pretty decent. The voice acting also caught my attention, and Yusuke Kobayashi, the voice of Natsuki Subaru, is playing Kazuya. I might give this a look if people say it's good, but it didn't blow me away. The second show is Seirei Gensoki, or Spirit Chronicles. This show is a lot to process. It's also an isekai, I think, but the protagonist gets isekai'd into another person's body with completely different memories. He's in the body of someone in a medieval town who's bent on getting revenge for his mother's death. But he also has memories of being a teenager in modern times and seeing a girl who looks like a childhood friend he promised to marry before dying in an accident. I think the concept is pretty unique, and I haven't really seen anything like it before in isekai. A lot of the dialogue was cliché, but other than that and a little bit of jarring CG, this was a pretty solid opening 5 minutes. Yoshitsugu Matsuoka is playing the lead too. Next up is Tante wo mo Shinderu, or The Detective is Already Dead. Of the shows so far, this is the one that actually made me want to continue watching past the 5 minutes immediately. It's got a trope that I'm a sucker for, which is a guy getting roped into some strange situation by a mysterious girl. In this case, she's a detective and she commandeers him as her assistant to figure out why their airplane was hijacked. The girl, Siesta, looks a bit like Tobichi Origami and has pretty much the same level of emotion, but she rarely draws me in. The dialogue is strange and unnatural, but in a good way. It's a stylistic choice like in a Wes Anderson movie. The voice acting also seems very strong despite the two leads being relative unknowns. I'll definitely be continuing this. The next show is Tsuki ga Michibiku Isekai Dochu, or Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy. Yup, it's another isekai, and this one doesn't really catch my interest. Almost all of the first 5 minutes is either narration or exposition through dialogue, telling the story very lazily. There are a few interesting elements, like the fact that the protagonist is familiar with isekai, his parents are from another world, and the goddess is mean. His special power is also knowing languages, which could be cool. But overall, even though this is clearly supposed to be a comedy, the jokes don't immediately land like Konosuba's do. It's a lackluster start. Now let's take a look at Kanojo mo Kanojo, or Girlfriend Girlfriend. I'm always down for romance anime, and this one drew me in right away with the unique pastel, polka-dotted visual style of the opening 30 seconds. I feel like this show gives out similar vibes to Rent a Girlfriend. The main character is unbelievably cringy so far. He's dating his childhood friend but embarrasses her at every turn. Meanwhile, a first-year student decides to make an over-the-top confession to him after working out for hours every day and learning how to cook for him. It seems kind of trashy, but in an enjoyable way. Also, the lead is voiced by Junya Enoki, who played Itadori in Jujutsu Kaisen. I'll probably continue with this show. Next up is Bokutachi no Remake, or Remake Our Life. To be honest, I didn't give this show much thought for most of the first 5 minutes. It's basically one gigantic exposition dump talking all about the protagonist's life and how he failed to work at a video game studio and couldn't succeed at anything else in the creative world. He regrets not going to art school. Basically, it seems like a slice of life with a lazy opening. But then, right at the end of the first 5 minutes, he wishes he could go back in time and redo his choice, then he opens his eyes and the colors are different, so it's pretty clear he got his wish. I wasn't expecting a time travel anime, but that does make sense with the show name. It's piqued my curiosity a bit, but I'm cautious. Let's switch over to Peach Boy Riverside. This is a fantasy anime and nothing in it interested me. There's a random princess who's traveling around and she meets a rabbit demi-human. They go into a village where one person is racist to the demi-human and says demi-humans are humans' mortal enemies, but then the local lord invites them to dinner at his mansion. Overall, it was pretty boring, and while it was strange, it wasn't strange enough to make me want to watch more just because of the bizarreness. Next is Vanitas no Carte, or The Case Study of Vanitas. This show is animated by Bones, so the visuals are fantastic right from the start. The setting is also intriguing, as the characters are on a steampunk airship traveling to 19th century Paris. The character designs are vibrant too. Although the show starts with narration, it's made interesting by the storybook-like art that sets up the show's premise of a vampire born under a blue moon who wants to take out those born under a crimson moon. I think that, at least visually, this show has the potential to be one of the best of the season. Now let's take a look at Shinigami Bochan to Kuro Maid, or The Duke of Death and His Maid. This is another romance anime about a girl teasing a guy, but instead of being in a school setting, it's got a fantasy premise. The Duke has a curse on him where anything he touches dies, and no one will stay around him except one maid who teases him by getting very close to him all the time. So far, the show reminds me a bit of Pushing Daisies, which I highly recommend. But the one gripe that I have with The Duke of Death and His Maid so far is the fact that it's a CG anime. It's not the worst CG I've ever seen, but it still looks unnatural. I am interested in the show, though. The next show is Remain, which is a water polo anime. In general, I don't watch much sports anime, but it's an interesting sport to pick. But even more interesting is the fact that the show doesn't start out by showing a sporting event. Instead, the protagonist Minato wakes up from a coma after a car accident and is missing all his memories of junior high, where he played water polo and won the nationals. His old team visits him in the hospital, but he doesn't remember them. It seems like Minato will have to rebuild his water polo career and his friendships from scratch. I'm already invested in this premise, and the show is animated by MAPPA, so it looks great. Next, let's switch to Sunny Boy. This show is the best so far in terms of building atmosphere and showing rather than telling. The basic premise is that there's a school full of kids that's now surrounded by dark nothingness, with all the outside world gone. In addition, some kids have developed superpowers. What's so compelling about the show is that it builds up to these things gradually. It focuses on the conversations between students first, which are strangely calm, before showing the situation. In addition, the superpowers are heard in the background with students breaking windows, but they aren't shown at all in the first 5 minutes. In addition, the student council doesn't have superpowers, a total inversion of the normal trope where the student council wields tremendous power. I love the visuals too. The show is animated by Madhouse, and the art style makes the show feel like it was made in the 90s. The last anime I took a look at this week is Make-You Black Company. I know there are always a lot of isekai nowadays, but this season is absolutely packed with isekai. This one's about a NEET who managed to avoid work and get a cushy life just through investing, who gets transported to a fantasy world where he's forced to work manual labor in a mine. It's a different premise than usual, especially since he doesn't seem to have any powers. Still, it's relatively uninteresting in my opinion, and even though it's a comedy, I didn't find the jokes very funny. The character designs also feel a bit bland despite there being all kinds of demi-humans. I don't think I'll continue with this one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for weekly content. I'm Matrix from Matrix AM, Anime, and more, and I hope you have a great day.